Good day, I'm Katie Peer for PMV In Depth. Thank you for joining me for another interview about Pickering and the Rebellion of 1837. In this series, we're traveling back to speak with the people who lived those times. Today we'll be exploring the regular citizens of Pickering who chose not to become involved in the Rebellion of 1837. Just like today, there were people who had different points of view and different political beliefs and ideals. The Major family of Pickering were Tory in their political beliefs. We'll be speaking with Mrs. Mary Sleigh today. She was born in 1805 in Pickering Township. Her parents were John and Sarah Major. Her grandfather, Thomas Major, became a United Empire Loyalist. He left the newly formed United States for New Brunswick, a new colony. There, his son John met and married Sarah Reynolds. John and Sarah eventually moved their family from New Brunswick to Upper Canada in the early 1800s and settled in Pickering Township. Thank you, Mrs. Sleigh, for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Mrs. Sleigh, tell us about your grandfather's decision to settle in Canada. I imagine those were very trying times for him.
It was very trying indeed. My father was born in Ireland. He was very loyal to the King and the British Empire. My grandfather was in the military. He was in the King's American Regiment, sent over to fight the Revolution in America. You see, the people in the colonies there decided to overthrow the king and set up their own government. After the war, he was moved to New Brunswick. He received free land for his loyal service to the king, and then he sent for his family.
Your parents met and married in New Brunswick and then put down roots there. They had, I believe, 5 of your older siblings in New Brunswick, and then they decided to move the family to Upper Canada. That must have been very difficult, Mrs. Sleigh. Tell us, please, what was it like moving a family across 2 provinces?
As you can well imagine, it was quite a journey with 5 young children. Tom, Hannah, Eleanor, Will, and Sam were all born in New Brunswick between 1794 and 1800. My sister Margaret was the first to be born in Upper Canada. She was born in April 1801 at York. Well, we call it Toronto now, of course. You see, because of my grandfather's service in the military, my father was also entitled to free land as the son of a loyalist. So the family set out for Upper Canada. They traveled up the St. Lawrence River to Ontario to York. Once there, my father submitted his petition for land and received it in 1802. Our family traveled overland to Pickering. They brought with them a team of oxen, a steer, and cattle. The stories they told about their travels to find their land. Well, you see, there were no roads. Not really. At least, not when you left Kingston Road along the lake. It was very hard going. They walked most of the way. We came because Father learned that the lands in Pickering were very good for farming, so he applied to have his lands transferred to Upper Canada, and the family moved west. Loyalists could do that. They could apply to government to change where their lands were, and Father was quite happy with the land he received in Pickering Township. He settled on Concession 5, Lot 18, directly south of Thomas Matthews.
I understand your father became quite a pillar of society, a leader of sorts. Tell us about his involvement in Pickering Township.
Oh, yes, he was very involved. My father built a mill on the creek on our land, and that brought quite a lot of businesses to the area. In fact, where our farm was located became known as the village of Major. or Majorville. My father was elected to a number of positions on the township council in the early years. Council meetings were held at our house from 1822 to 1825. And Father was elected the tax collector in 1815. That was a hard job, especially during the war. People had to pay their taxes in cash, and sometimes they had trouble getting that money together. He was elected a pound keeper in 1820. Oh, I remember that. He had to collect and keep any stray horses, cattle, or hogs that had escaped their own fields. That was easier than collecting taxes. My brothers, sisters, and I had to help feed and water the animals until they were collected by their owners. Sometimes he sent us to collect the strays and that our neighbors had reported. Father was also elected a pathmaster in 1821, the same year that Peter Matthews was also elected to that position. As pathmasters, they had to get the local men to work on teams to help clear and build roads, especially the roads along the land where no one was living. So, yes, you might say my father was very well respected in the community.
True to family politics, you married a Tory supporter, Mr. William Sleigh, in 1824. Can you tell us a little bit about your husband and what he contributed to the community of Pickering?
William was from England. He immigrated straight to Upper Canada, so there was no question where he stood in politics. William was an educated man. He wanted better for our children than our parents could give me and my sisters and brothers. He applied to the government and was given a grant to open a school. It was the first government-funded school in Pickering. He opened it in 1822. He was also elected to the township council as the clerk from 1825 to 1835. 10 years in a row.
Your family did not side with the rebels when 1837 came around. You and your husband and the Majors remained sympathetic to the Tories. It sounds like you and your family wanted the same improvements the reformers did and that the rebels took up arms for. Better roads, local education. Were you not persuaded to push for those improvements sooner? Surely Peter Matthews tried to persuade your husband and brothers to join him.
No. We never, ever thought that taking up arms against the government was the way to make change. Perhaps it was because my father and husband came straight from the homeland that their loyalty to the government was unwavering. Peter and many of the others who joined him from Pickering had come from the United States, having lived generations there. They would have picked up ideas and beliefs that were growing there long before the Revolution. They believed that the common man had the right to make political decisions. My husband and father believed that there were men born to rule and make higher decisions. And we couldn't complain. Certainly my husband enjoyed the generosity of the government when he was allowed to open a school here. Things were hard, but they were as they should be.
Given that the ideals of the rebellion came to pass in your lifetime, responsible government, township councils with more power, and ordinary elected men with authority, do you think if they had to do it over again, your brothers and husband might have joined Peter?
I don't think so. It was still wrong and traitorous at the time. They wouldn't have ever thought those actions to be right or justified.
The rebellion divided families and friends on different political sides. What was the hardest part for you and your family?
The hanging of Peter Matthews. He was my sister Hannah's husband. Thank goodness she didn't live to see his actions and his punishment, or to see her sons follow him to Montgomery's tavern. I feel for his second wife, Hannah and his mother, Mary Rattan Matthews. The shame they've had to live with. Peter and his family were our neighbors from the time we arrived in Pickering. They lived across the road from us. Peter was a good man. He cared for the same things that my father did and that his father before him did. He was misguided.
We thank Mrs. Sleigh for joining us today. Mrs. Sleigh's thoughts and insights have shed light on what life must have been like in our community at the time of the rebellion. All historical records indicate that the rebels came from a broad cross-section of Upper Canadian society. The government at the time tried to suggest that the rebels were largely recent immigrants to Upper Canada, but that's not true. There were a lot of loyalists among the radicals. I'm Katie Peer. Thank you for joining us for another interview on In Depth as we explore Pickering's involvement in the Rebellion of 1837. I hope you'll tune in for more.